Hi there. My name is Melissa, and welcome to Meet and Eat Together. I have a guest here with me today, Shira Rosenbluth, and I thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Shira is a therapist like me, and she's also a blogger. She's active on social media. She has a wonderful message, and we're going to learn more about her messaging today and hear a bit about her personal experience as well. And we're going to be doing all of this while at the same time going through a therapeutic meal together. And so the structure that we use for this therapeutic meal virtual experience is very similar to the structure that we use in a treatment setting. So I'm going to walk you through it, explain what that looks like. And throughout the broadcast, you are welcome to send in questions. You can do that through any of the platforms that we're streaming on right now. So whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and I'll try to pay attention to questions coming in. Also, it's a great opportunity if you have any friends or anyone else who you think might benefit from this series to please feel free to tag or invite others to join us today or after the fact. The videos will be available for people. And we're hoping that it's some really educational content that's engaging and will be helpful to people, especially during this tricky time right now. So the first thing that we usually do when we begin a therapeutic meal is we check in about the meal in front of us, and we share with the group what we brought, how we made the decision around our meal. So what might have influenced our decision making around the meal. And then we just want to also make sure that we have all the necessary components. What we do at Columbus Park, which is the center where I work, we try to give some very, very basic guidelines for the meal so that we're sure that people are bringing a meal that's adequate and balanced and meeting their needs. What we say is we want the meal to be balanced. We'll give you some feedback with depending on what you bring, but the meal should have a carbohydrate component. It should have a protein component. There should be adequate fat. And you can add a fruit and vegetable if you'd like, or you can have a dessert for a side. We usually recommend that there's something kind of on the side of the main course. So today I'll share with you what I brought. And I'm kind of bummed out about this meal, honestly. I'm having a lot of trouble with grocery shopping right now. So this is definitely not going to be one of my favorites, and it's kind of a white and orange theme in a sense, because I have a cheese sandwich on some bread. I have potato chips, which I like, so that's good. And then I have some cantaloupe. Normally when I make a sandwich, I like to have some kind of turkey or roast beef or something like that. And so I only had the cheese, so the plain cheese sandwich. So we'll see how that goes. Won't be my favorite. But it sort of gives me the opportunity to reflect on how so often in an eating disorder, there's so much deprivation around food that there's kind of this inherent pressure to make your meal really, really good and special. And so some people will say it feels like a waste to have a meal that doesn't taste so good, or it just feels like you're missing an opportunity. So I'm sort of practicing that right now, recognizing that this is not my favorite, but I'm gonna eat it and nourish myself, and I'll feel good because I need the sustenance. So and the way that I portion it out is I always just make sure that I take 2 pieces of standard bread or a roll, or you can also use a wrap. I add on my the contents. So this is a few pieces of cheese. I added honey mustard just to kind of give it a little flavor. And then I took a handful of chips and then kind of filled my plate with a portion of the cantaloupe, because I figured it might be nice to have a little vegetable or fruit on the side. So I chose a fruit. Shira, welcome. Hello.
Thank you. Hi.
Maybe you can share with us a bit about your meal that you selected.
Yeah. So I love that you're talking about the fact that we just don't necessarily have we don't have the same accessibility that we had a month ago. So similar to you, my meal is not something that I would necessarily gravitate towards, but it's just what I have. And so I'm going to make it work. So I have just a beef stew, which is it's funny because normally I prefer to pick the foods that sound good to me, but also I'm so grateful for my recovery because it allows me the opportunity to be flexible. And so my dad brought me over food a week ago or a few days ago, and it's Passover. So not only am I dealing with the COVID, but I'm also having to eat just completely different foods than what I would normally eat. So I have both of those together. And so what's really cool is that I can just say, I don't maybe in my eating disorder, I would worry about I don't know what's in it and I don't know how they prepared it and all of the eating disorder thoughts. But now I'm just it's a meal. My dad brought it over and it's good enough. And that's what I'm going to have. So it has meat, potatoes, and carrots. And I think I'll probably have some chocolate later if I want something sweet. So
it's so encouraging. I would imagine for listeners to hear that you really can get to that place where you can have that flexibility, and that the meal could just be just a little part of your day. And it's super important because obviously you need the nourishment, but that it doesn't have as much meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which really just lets you live so much more of a fuller life when food is an important, but just one component of your life instead of just it being all consuming. So it's really nice.
I'm so happy for you that you're in that place. That's amazing. So the next thing that we do when we have a meal together in a treatment setting is we set some kind of intention or goal for the meal. So that might be challenging yourself with something that you haven't eaten before. My challenge for myself is that I'm just not that crazy about my lunch. And so I'm going to just eat it. And I'm really going to just keep turning my mind to our conversation. And that's where I'm going to get my nourishment. I'm really looking forward to talking to Shira. So that's going to be my focus now. And so folks out there, go ahead and pick an intention. It can be, I'm going to try something challenging, or I'm going to practice a particular skill that I've been working on, or I'm going to use a lot of self-compassion as I eat my meal. Or I'm really just going to work on pacing, or I'm going to really work on distracting myself and attending to the conversation and just, completing my meal. That's going to be the goal. So it's a good opportunity to make an intention. And so what I'm going to do is set a timer. I'm going to set the timer for 15 minutes. That's about halfway through the meal component. And we kind of roughly set the eating portion to be about 30 minutes, just thinking that that's kind of a nice amount of time. It's kind of helpful if you can eat your meal within 30 minutes, because it just allows you to have time for, if you have a quick break at work or for school or whatever it is, you want to be able to finish your meal within a reasonable time frame. And oftentimes eating disorders can make the meal drag out. Sometimes people eat very slowly, or because it's very difficult, or because there's a way that they want to kind of extend the meal experience. So for whatever the reason, what we're going to try to do is eat within 30 minutes. So I'm going to let you know when we're about halfway done. And then I'll let you know again when we have about 5 minutes left, just so you can work on your pacing. I'm going to be eating throughout. I'm going to try to keep a pretty steady pace. If there's anybody out there that is working on pacing, feel free to follow along. I'll try to do, sometimes I tend to eat kind of fast. So I'm going to be cognizant of maybe slowing myself down so that folks out there can have a reasonable pace for their meal. And Shira, you'll do the best you can to eat and talk, but also you're probably going to do more talking than I will. So,
okay.
So Shira, I think the first question for you is, tell us about your history. Tell us about what brought you to this space and dedicating your career now to treating eating disorders.
Yeah. So I had my own eating disorder from the age of 10, but I remember, disordered thoughts and discomfort in my body from as early as 5. And I went through what I thought was the recovery that I was going to have, but not realizing that it was kind of the quasi recovery where food very much still controlled my life. But I didn't have that much insight into it, I think, which is common with eating disorders. Sometimes you don't realize just how sick you are. I went to grad school. I always wanted to be a therapist. I was always just connected with people. I had an easy time talking to people, was just naturally empathic. And so, but I thought I would never work with eating disorders because, I struggled with one and you're not supposed to, or maybe that's not a good idea, just from what I heard. But I worked in a clinic and I had my first client with an eating disorder and I fell in love with it. I was excited about it. I was passionate about it. And I think it's important just to say that just because I have my own experience, it doesn't mean that I assume I know everything about my clients. Everyone has their own unique story and their own unique experience. But I think I can connect in a way that maybe someone that hasn't experienced an eating disorder can. And so, I had one eating disorder client, a client with an eating disorder, loved my work. And so they gave me another client. I kind of became the unofficial eating disorder therapist of the clinic. And so then after I got, I finished up my licensing hours, I specifically went into eating disorders. And I know in my own experience with my treatment, I didn't always have the greatest or safest experience with my providers. And so it's so important to me to offer like a safe place for my clients. So yeah.
Would you mind elaborating on that a bit?
Yeah.
I'm sure you had many very positive treatment experiences, but it sounds like there were some ways that treatment didn't quite work for you. And I'm curious to hear why that might have been.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, we look at the media and we have this idea of what eating disorders should look like. The stereotypical thin white woman, which unfortunately is so inaccurate. The majority of people don't necessarily look like what the media portrays eating disorders to look like. And you can have a restrictive eating disorder at any size. You could have binge eating disorder at any size. It's really not about what you look like. It's about what your actions are and how you're treating your body in your relationship with food. And so I didn't look like someone who had an eating disorder. And unfortunately, some of my providers had their own internalized fat phobia. And so assumed things about me, made comments about my body, praised me for losing weight, which unfortunately is so problematic, because my restriction was essentially encouraged, which is, you would never want that in eating disorder treatment of all places. And so it kind of confirmed for me the messages that I already believed, and the messages that I already got my entire life, is that my body is different, my body's bad, my body's wrong, my body can't tolerate food, which of course are all inaccurate, but were unfortunately just reinforced by my providers like time and time again. I'm so fortunate that the last couple of years in my own work, while I became a lot more vocal and passionate about health at every size, and working from that framework as a therapist, I realized the only way for me to be safe in my own treatment was to pursue providers that believed in health at every size. And so I found a therapist and a dietitian who worked from a health at every size framework. And for the first time in my life, I experienced treatment where I felt safe in my body. And I knew that they wanted me to eat in a flexible, just way that, and whatever happens to my body happens to my body. That's just where my body is meant to be. It might not be where society wants it to be, but that's where I can live my fullest, best life. And so I'm so grateful for that treatment, because it's allowed me to get to a place that I honestly never dreamed was possible. And I'm very grateful for my recovery.
Wow. So would you mind just sharing with everybody a little bit more about what is this health at every size movement or approach?
So I think people sometimes have a misconception that health at every size means that you're healthy at every size. And that's not true. How could that be? It's not what it is. It just means that every single person is entitled to work on their health if that's what they want, if that's what their goals are, separate from a number on the scale. So regardless of your size, regardless of your socioeconomic status, regardless of anything, you can pursue health without attaching it to a number on the scale, which is very different, because I feel like in our society, we equate thinness to health, right? And that we automatically assume that someone that's in a larger body is unhealthy, which is so problematic in so many ways, and also just perpetuates eating disorders and disordered eating and the obsession to lose weight. And I think another thing that people say in terms of when we talk about health at every size is, yeah, but this person is so big, like, isn't there a limit? And no, there's no limit on a person being worthy of respect and love, and a person being able to, again, work on their health without attaching it to a number on the scale. So it's kind of how I look at it.
Well said. I think a lot of people, even people in the field of eating disorders, and for sure people in the medical community, really read up and learn more about, the facts that have been uncovered by leaders in the health at every size movement. People are completely shocked to hear. And so much of what has been uncovered in absolutely, like, in science and research, it really speaks to the fact that people actually really can be healthy in any size, like literally, that someone's size has nothing to do with their physical health. Right. And that there is so much research and science that backs that up. Maybe it's even worth, I think a lot of people don't even realize this. I mean, I think so many people have heard about the war on obesity and this idea that obesity kills. And so much of that messaging is based on actual studies and science that have proved to be inaccurate.
Right.
So I think it was something the CDC, it was back in the early 2000s, had released this data saying that something like 400,000 Americans die every year from obesity. And then within a year, they actually like reduced, they released additional information using different methodology in the studies, and cleaning up the data. And it turned out it wasn't 400,000 people who died of obesity, but it was 26,000. And that then the 26,000 even that were obese who died, we don't even think actually that it had much to do with the fact that they were in a higher BMI, but rather that there may be association with other conditions, or it may have been related to completely to factors that have nothing to do with body size.
Right. And I think the problem with connecting, correlation and causation, like, if we don't take into account, first of all, I don't even like to use the word obese because I think it's like just such a stigmatizing word.
Yeah, it's such a stigmatizing word. Yeah.
And I think it literally means to eat oneself in Latin, which is so horrific.
Oh my God.
And also, we can talk about this too, but the BMI is so problematic.
Arbitrary. Yeah, so problematic.
It's garbage. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that even the term obese is incredibly stigmatizing, but I just forgot what I was going to say. The correlation. So if we don't take into account, that a person in a larger body, they have inferior access to medical care. Mm-hmm. They have less employment opportunities. They are often abused and ridiculed. And we live in a culture that is awful to people in larger bodies. And of course, that impacts health. Like we know that stress causes high blood pressure, causes heart conditions, causes high cholesterol. Like we know that that's connected. So if a person's going through weight stigma and exposed to stress on a daily basis, we can't decide that their weight caused the health problems. We don't know that it's not the stress and the weight stigma that caused their weight issues. So again, like correlation does not equal causation, and that's something we need to remember. Yeah, I think
it's also worth noting that many people in larger bodies have experienced so much dieting in their lives because of the pressures of our culture, and dieting invariably leads to weight fluctuations, which is known to be associated with certain health conditions like inflammation in the body. So it's actually the diet culture itself that is causing health problems, without question, as opposed to body size.
Right. I mean, dieting, we know it causes stress to the body. It slows the metabolism down. It puts your body in starvation mode. Your body doesn't know, I'm trying to fit in with the culture. It just knows it's being starved. And so it's going to react by slowing your metabolism down, by just going into starvation mode, which again causes, ironically, diabetes and all the things that we again associate with larger people can often come from the yo-yo dieting, because we know that dieting is unsustainable long term. So
I mean, it's kind of almost funny too, because I think there are a lot of studies that actually show that people in larger bodies actually live longer even than people in smaller bodies, which is so fascinating. So I mean, it just is shocking to me that we have a whole culture and a society that really functions around faulty information. And this is information that even many doctors aren't aware of, that so many people have had that experience of going to the doctor's office and being recommended, it's recommended that they lose some weight for health purposes, which is completely upside down.
Right.
I was looking at your Instagram account, which I love.
Thank you.
Your messaging, and I'm so impressed with you just overall. And I saw you posted something along those lines, something about how kind of sort of quoting doctors telling people to lose weight is basically advising them to do something that's been proven to be unsustainable and harmful for the vast majority of people long term. Yeah.
Oh, that got people mad at me on Twitter. Oh boy.
Talk about that. What happened? What was the backlash there?
There are a lot of keto people on Twitter, a lot of keto men on Twitter. And so, they came for me, but that's okay. Usually when that happens, I call a friend, or I just, reach out to somebody. I'm like, just remind me of, that I'm not the one that's like off my rocker here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day, I believe in everything that I put out 100%. I think sometimes you get backlash. I mean, the diet industry is $70 billion. We have an entire industry invested in us believing that our bodies are a problem in need of fixing. So if I'm threatening the $70 billion industry, I'm threatening people that are, pursuing keto and intermittent fasting, whatever the latest fad diet is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make people mad, but I'm just not gonna stop talking about the truth, which is, the things that I share. And unfortunately, when doctors are telling patients to lose weight, it might seem like, I think I called it lazy medicine, because there's no disease that a larger person that gets that a thin person doesn't get. And if a thin person walks into the doctor's office with, say, diabetes, the doctor's not going to look at them and say, lose weight. Doctor's going to talk to them about what they can do to, stabilize their blood sugar. And that might look like 10 million different things. But if somebody in a larger body comes to the doctor's office, they won't even look at them. They'll just be like, you need to lose weight, which is scary. And oftentimes so many other issues can go unnoticed. And
it's funny with diabetes in particular, because I think there's so much research that shows that type 2 diabetes can be improved or even reversed just via certain nutritional changes and exercise habits, even if there's no weight loss. So completely regardless of weight loss, if there might be certain adjustments that someone might need to make in terms of their nutrition, that's one thing. It has nothing to do with weight. And I think it's very similar with blood pressure, that there can be improvement in hypertension without weight loss, through certain dietary changes, like maybe a reduction in sodium, things like that. And certainly, exercise is it's healthy for us. It's been shown to be associated with health benefits, but it's so rare that we're really using exercise in our culture for its health benefits, right? It's so often associated with, getting some sort of appearance.
Or you have to burn your food. You have to burn your, you have to But I also think just even in terms of the diabetes piece, is that it's looked at as like a personal doing or a personal failure, or you caused it, which is so horrific. And we really, yes, there are some times where we can make dietary changes for sure, but also sometimes where the person just needs medication, and no dietary changes are going to change it, and that's okay. Like it's. I feel like when we turn into it's completely on that person, it becomes so stigmatizing. And, some people have diabetes and they can do all the, appropriate exercise or all of the dietary changes, and they'll still need medicine, and that's okay. So,
that's such a point. That's such a good point. And especially around these conditions, there's this idea that you've asked for it. If you've got it, you've asked for it, and it's insanity.
Yeah.
Without question.
Absolutely. And then the exercise piece for sure. It's sad because it can be just such a neutral, great way of feeling good, there's so many amazing benefits for your mood, but it's just turned into another diet culture piece where you have to be torturing your body and pushing it to max 10 at all costs for it to count, for you to be able to earn your dinner or your dessert, which is so sad.
Just so you know, we're 15 minutes into the meal, so I'm gonna let you know when we have 5 minutes left of the meal portion. I think there was a post that you wrote about, I think in particular, this is such a triggering time right now, this quarantine and what's happening in our world for all of us. And, we're so exposed right now to social media. I mean, it's really our only access to the world right now is through our screens. So I think we're all being just bombarded so much more. And the exercise piece is so all over the place. I think you had written something about how, oftentimes people feel like they have to earn their food through exercise, that you deserve food regardless of whether you actually, everybody deserves to eat regardless of whether you exercise or not. Like the two should not be connected.
Right. And your body's not a cash register. Like it doesn't have to equal out at the end of the day. Like your body's not a machine. It's a lot more flexible than that. It can deal with things being different from day to day. It's really more over time what matters, Yeah. And when I say what matters, I just mean like making sure you're eating enough and that you're not taking anything too extreme, like in terms of exercise. But like if you don't move all day, you still need to eat your food. And I think that that's not something that our society tells us. And unfortunately now, like you said, we're being bombarded with like messages from every corner about how you should be exercising, how you must move. And again, there's nothing wrong with moving, but not with the shoulds and not with the guilt and not with all of that, not with the disorder involved,
I mean, how did you, as I'm listening to you speaking, I'm just so amazed by your courage and your knowledge, and it's just remarkable to see that how you've been able to achieve this in a relatively short amount of time. How can you speak to that? Like what What brought you to a place where you experienced shame and doubt about yourself, to have such a transformation, to become such a leader and to have such a strong voice and so much courage? And
well, I think I do want to say that, these are always messages that I believed and that I believed for others, and somewhat believed for myself. But for me, my eating disorder had a lot to do with trauma. And so something that I learned, because I used to feel so much shame for believing in these things, for being a therapist, and then also struggling. I felt like a hypocrite. I felt like a liar. But I realized that knowing doesn't translate to doing. It's I believe in the things I say with all of my heart. I think, and for me to say that I'm completely confident and that I'm recovered perfectly right now, like that wouldn't be accurate either. Like I still struggle. I still have to reach out to my supports. I still have to work really hard at my recovery. But I think for a long time, I couldn't really see how sick I was. I think once I was able to see it, and I'm not sure how that happened, but I think I turned 30 and I realized I lost another decade to my eating disorder. And that was really heartbreaking for me. And I think I started realizing all the things that I couldn't do in my eating disorder. I couldn't socialize. I couldn't connect with people because everything revolved around my eating disorder, and my eating disorder shrunk my entire life. And so I think once I realized that, it was pretty devastating to me. And so when I specifically seeked out providers that were safe, that really made a huge impact. And for me, the difference was being able to ask for help. I think it was so hard for me to even acknowledge that I needed help, to acknowledge how much help I needed. I needed a lot of help. I was very sick. But for me to continue asking for help and to get what I needed from the people that I trusted was a huge turning point for me, I think. And just acknowledging that I couldn't do it alone and that I needed support and that it didn't make me weak. My eating disorder was strong. And so I wouldn't say that I'm like perfectly recovered now. And it doesn't work like that. Recovery is so messy. Recovery has so many ups and downs. But I think knowing that the life that I want to live is not going to happen in my eating disorder, and that and another thing that's really important to me is like, I'm not one of those people, my weight changed a lot in my eating disorder to what society probably, it was much more acceptable, but it came at a cost. And so I want to be that person that like shows people, because for me, what really helped me was having people in larger bodies who were fully recovered. Kind of like, it was very inspiring to me to realize like these people I love and I respect. I wouldn't ask them to change a thing about themselves, and they're living incredible full lives. Some of them are therapists treating other people too. And that was so inspiring to me. And I want to be able to be that for other people, where people know like, no, I don't have that body that people that's a stereotypical, like my thin body recovering into my other thin body. It's not that way. And I want people to know that recovery is still worth it, that your body doesn't have to, it's a lot harder, I think, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question.
It totally did. And it also leads to my next question. We all still struggle. You still struggle. Can you share with our viewers, what's been helping you lately, especially right now, given this difficult time in particular?
Yeah. So one thing I want to say that like, for me, some of it is just like sitting and letting myself feel what I need to feel. I think there's so much like, just be positive, just stay strong, just be happy. No, I'm not positive right now. I'm pretty sad. I'm lonely. I'm, and yes, FaceTime, I'm so grateful for it, but it's not the same as seeing people in person. So just really allowing myself to feel the sadness without needing to change it, I think is important. And then while FaceTime is not the same and Zoom is not the same, it's still something, and I'm grateful for it. So forcing myself, even in the moments where I want to isolate, because that's what I tend to do when I'm feeling down, pushing myself to reach out to my supports. I think now of all times, community is so important, and not just with FaceTime, but like, what am I scrolling through on my Instagram all day? What am I scrolling through on Facebook? Are these people that like make me happy, or are these things that I don't want to be seeing? Like if I'm going to be seeing somebody promoting their diets or their weight loss or their crazy exercise plan, delete. Like life is too short to allow myself to see that on a daily basis. Even if it's a friend or relative, I can mute it. I can, whatever I need to do to keep myself safe. And so, I'm really protective of my environment, even more so right now.
I think that is so right on, that we have some ability to curate our environments, because I was talking about this with another colleague recently, where she was saying, a lot of people are saying to me that they're getting a lot of, diet messaging on their Instagram feeds, or they're getting a lot of exercise messaging. And she said, it's funny, I'm not getting any of that. And then she realized that it's because she's created kind of a world for herself where I guess the things that she's searching or the things that she's showing interest in just aren't associated as much with that material.
Yeah.
And it really got me thinking that is something so concrete that people can begin to do. And maybe it would be like, I think there's something really empowering about that too, just removing something from your vision, from, just removing it. It doesn't have to be your reality. And really working on surrounding yourself with inspiring images and images that are supporting your health. It's almost like sometimes there's this kind of human tendency to almost want to expose yourself to things that make you suffer, that you kind of want to just have it right there in your face, just sort of in some ways just make yourself compare yourself or feel less than. And so I think we have to be very intentional about creating an environment for ourselves where we really don't. And that instead the messaging that we're looking at is inspiring. And there's no question when I was looking at your feed, it was just really inspiring. I just felt good, so I want, I just you want more of that. Yeah.
I like my rainbows. I like my colorful things. Then
I love the rainbows.
And then I get pretty feisty for sure. So
you get feisty, but then you add like a little bit of sparkle and pastels, and it really
I think so.
packages it really well. It's not threatening.
Thank you.
And I think that is something, you're not threatening. Like you have you have strong views, but they're very, you present them in a very effective way. It's
Thank you.
On anybody's toes.
I'm the least confrontational person you'll ever meet. So. But I'm serious, but I'm feisty and I'm assertive. So
that's awesome. Can you speak? There was also, I saw also on your feed a few things about body positivity, and sometimes people talk about body positivity, sometimes people talk about body neutrality. And so maybe we can use a little time now with the rest of our meeting to help viewers, anyone who is struggling and getting stuck on their appearance, their body, their size, their externals, having such a big part of how they feel about themselves. What are some things that we can do to move toward more neutral language, to more acceptance and turning our minds? I think you wrote in one of your posts something to the effect of, body positivity is really great, but I really want to get to a place where my body doesn't dictate my self-worth. In a way, it's almost keeping the conversation about body when we say we're going to be body positive. Let's just drop the body and just be positive. Do you know what I mean?
That's exactly what I was going to say, was that what is our definition of body positivity or body image? Because I think a lot of people have the idea that it's about loving what your body looks like. And for me, it's just about knowing that I'm so much more than what I look like. Yeah. It's not to say that I want to look in the mirror and be sad. Obviously, I don't want that. But for me, again, with a lifetime of being told that my body was wrong, being told when I was 5 that I couldn't be loved unless I lost weight, those are things that really impacted me, probably in a really, really deep way. And I think, so for me, it's really about knowing that I'm just so much more than my body, filling my life up with things that matter and that give me meaning, surrounding myself with people that accept me as I am with no judgment, and feeling safe to eat around those people, I think. But the reality is that we're all going to have bad body image days. That's just, sometimes we wake up and we just don't feel good. But I think it's kind of when we have those moments to be curious instead of judging it. I think, just because somebody is a body positive person on the internet, they're not going to feel perfect about their bodies at all times. It's not realistic. Yeah. But just getting curious when those moments come up. And sometimes it's like, what's going on for me that day? Am I having a hard week? Or right now we're in a really, really hard spot. So it makes sense. And I think people feel shame, there's so many things going on in this world right now, and I'm being so shallow. No, it makes so much sense that you're turning to your body, which is tangible, in an effort to kind of try to make sense of things, or try to control things, or try to just turn to something that you've turned to in moments of chaos, but also with the acknowledgement that trying to fix our bodies is really not what's going to make things better. I think people's eating disorders want them to believe that it will, but it just makes it more chaotic.
Absolutely. I kind of like that. I think it's a Buddhist concept of being a beginner. It's never too late to kind of be a beginner at something. And maybe if we take anything from this conversation, I mean, we think we take a lot from this conversation, but, you know, to kind of be a beginner about yourself and about, you know, who is this person that I am, and what makes me valuable, and, you know, who do I want to, you know, what's important to me, what's going to be really enriching, what's going to really nourish me in my life. And as much as possible, just trying to create more of those experiences, trying to keep turning your mind to those experiences, because the food, the body thoughts just are so all consuming, and they just, without question, they just stifle all of the other possibility when they become that loud, you know?
Yeah. And it's funny because I remember back when I was struggling with my eating disorder, I got to the weight that I wanted to be at. And I remember my friend who's a dietitian just turned to me and said, you know, for someone that's supposed to be so happy about where their body is, I've never seen you more miserable. And I think that's something that I need to remember. And that I think is something that's important for anyone struggling with an eating disorder to remember, is that we think it's going to bring us happiness or peace or calm or safety. And nothing about the eating disorder is happy. It's so all consuming. And so, you know, I got to the weight where, it did feel in some ways easier and safer to live in our world. But it came at such a cost of my relationships, of my connections, of my life. And so it's not what I want for myself. It's not my values. It's maybe my eating disorder values, but it's not my values. And so I think another piece of body positivity or body image is like connecting to what your values are, which are usually very different than what your eating disorder values are. So,
yeah, we did that exercise the other day about thinking about your 80th birthday party, and, you know, thinking about the future, and, you know, what do you want people to say about you when they get up and they make their toast about who you were as a person, and what kind of life you led. And rarely when we do that exercise do people say, well, I want everyone to get up and talk about how great my body was, or how thin I was, or how, you know, in control of my food I was. You know, nobody ever says that. You know, we're so much more than that. We want our lives to stand for so much more than that. So yeah, it's a really interesting exercise. I'm going to stop for just a moment because we've kind of more or less finished the meal component. If you're still eating, no worries at all. I tried to kind of keep a steady pace. I was able to finish with mostly within 30 minutes. I completed my meal. I feel like, you know, usually we'll check in about how we feel at the end of each meal. You know, what are you feeling in your body? What are you feeling emotionally? And I feel very comfortable. The meal was, you know, a fine amount. I don't feel overly full or anything like that. I'm pretty sure I'm going to want something sweet in a little bit. And I know we have some Oreos in the other room. That's kind of my go-to lately. So I'm sure I'm going to enjoy a snack soon. How are you feeling? Shira, you didn't really get to eat all your meal. I'm gonna teach
actually
a little
did.
skill.
Actually,
Oh, you did pretty well. Okay. I'm impressed. Really good. You did that so good.
I'm so used to doing meal support and eating at the same time. It's not hard for me. And also it was very soft. There wasn't a lot of chewing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, you know, I'm having a harder day than usual. So I'm noticing that it's connected to my hunger fullness level. So I wasn't really hungry for the meal. Got to eat anyway, whether I'm hungry or full. Yeah. And so I'm kind of just like neutral, which is how I started. Yeah. But again, like it's important to eat whether or not I'm hungry. So do what you got to do. And I'll probably reach out to some of my friends this afternoon and have like a desserty snack with them. So yeah.
I think that's a really good point, that in times of chaos or higher stress, falling back on that regular eating component, you know, you just stay steady with eating your meals, even if you might not be feeling it in the moment. Just really trying to maintain that structure is helpful for people, especially in the earlier stages of the process, when you may not always have the cues reliably, you know, because oftentimes that kind of restrictive tendencies rob you of that ability to notice that you're hungry or full. So sometimes it's helpful just to get more robotic about it. So I love that idea of, you know, today was a harder day, you might not be feeling it, and you still, you know, do what you know is going to work for you to keep yourself nourished.
Yeah. And even if you had your cues in moments of high stress, sometimes if that's where you're used to going to restriction, it's just like the tendency. So yeah, it's important to have that consistent schedule.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to talk a little bit about acceptance. So in a treatment setting, we often, after the meal, we try not to do too much opening up of feelings. We used to do more processing. It's funny. We used to do more processing, you know, want to talk about what we're feeling, but then we realized that oftentimes that just opened things up and it made it harder to move on and move to the next activity. And so what we started doing more is really preparing for moving on and for coping. And so we got more focused on skills work. What can we do specifically, concretely to get through and to move on from this meal to our lives. So one of the things I want to talk about today, I just thought it was a nice fit to talk about acceptance. And when I talk about acceptance, I'm not just talking about body acceptance. I'm talking about acceptance of emotions, acceptance of thoughts, acceptance of memories. And today I'm specifically going to be talking about acceptance of difficult feelings or difficult memories or difficult thoughts, because often it's really human nature when you're experiencing something uncomfortable to want to avoid or to move on from it, not to stay with it. And that's okay sometimes. It's actually really adaptive. Often, if you have a headache, you might take a Tylenol so that you can escape the pain. Like, that's great to be able to do. But there are times when it's not helpful, it's not life enhancing. So we can think about how sometimes we might have an emotion around specifically our bodies or a worry about our food. And sometimes we might avoid eating, or we might use food in a way that's trying to escape from the emotion. So we're going to talk about how do you sit with emotions. And I'm gonna do it through. I'm gonna teach the skill through a metaphor, which is very much a part of acceptance and commitment therapy. It's a very particular kind of therapy that I love, that is so much more about doing rather than talking. So it involves a lot of these kind of concepts that are presented in metaphors. So this is a really cool one I like. That's the demons on the boat metaphor. And the idea is that we're all in our own boats and we have our hands on the tiller, and underneath the boat, down in the quarters, what do you call the underneath part of the boat? The quarters, not the cockpit, not the cockpit. It's the underneath part. It's a nice boat. There's an underneath part. And in there are demons. And as long as you stay floating aimlessly at sea, they stay down underneath the boat and they don't bother you. But the moment you turn the tiller to move in life direction, because you see the land ahead looks interesting and promising, and it has features to it that are pulling you and interesting to you, as soon as you start to turn, the demons come up, and they start scaring you and making you just intensely uncomfortable. And so you immediately just allow yourself to float aimlessly again. You move away from land and you just stay in the sea. And that happens again and again. Every time you try to move in your valued direction, you might feel like those demons come up and they challenge you. And so the idea is that, what happens if actually even trying once to turn the tiller toward land and see what the demons actually do. And the idea in this metaphor is that they come out and they try to scare you, but then you kind of get used to having them around a little bit and you don't let them push you around. You kind of drop the struggle with the demons and you let them kind of convene around you, and you still go towards shore. And then what you realize also as you're going towards shore is that process, even with the demons there, actually at times is really fulfilling, because you're moving in a valued direction and you recognize that you're living through something difficult, but you're tolerating it in service of something that's important to you. So it's kind of a cool concept. And I like to think about when those demons come up and how to allow them to be there and how to make space for them. So I'm going to share a little screenshot. I hope I can do this, the technology piece, because I wanted to share a little screenshot with everybody. Give me just 1 second. And this focuses, share screen. Okay, here, let's see. Okay.
Nice. Work.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. So this is just a little strategy. This is kind of some direction around how we can accept emotion. Can you see it, or is it very tiny?
No, I can see it. Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah, okay. So the first thing we do is observe. And take a screenshot of this if you'd like, or you can replay this video anytime. So, you can just enjoy it right now and you can take notes another time, because I think this is really helpful material. So what do we do when we have an emotion that's uncomfortable, or a thought that's uncomfortable? The first thing we do is we want to observe it. And to try to be kind of like a curious scientist about it. Ooh, I'm noticing a feeling. I'm noticing a sensation. There's that feeling again. There's that thought again. It's uncomfortable. I'm curious about it. So first, just noticing it. The next thing we can do is just take a couple of breaths, just slow yourself down a bit. When we slow ourselves down, we can actually make room for the painful feelings and sensations. We don't have to turn the tiller back and float aimlessly at sea. When we can kind of make room for some of these feelings. The other idea is this concept of expansion. So sometimes I like to even just imagine the feeling as having a shape or being somewhere in my body. Like, is it round? Is it like an amoeba? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your chest? Where in your body is it? And, if it's there in your body, can you kind of expand and make room for it? Not to try to, it's not bigger than you actually. It's there and it's fitting within you. And can you make a little bit of space? Can you open yourself up to it? Allow it to be there. So acceptance doesn't mean that you have to like this feeling or you approve of it or you want it. It just means that you're allowing it. And oftentimes, these uncomfortable feelings, of course, you don't want them. And of course, they're unpleasant and you want them to go away. But when we're doing this, we're kind of allowing them to be there. We're dropping the struggle with them. Objectify, I sort of touched on that when I talked about making space. The idea that, try to do this imaginal experience where, what does it look like? What color is it? Is it hot? The feeling, is it hot? Is it cold? Is it pulsing? Is it solid? And try to kind of, in your mind, kind of give it some kind of form so you can make space for it. Then normalize, just remember that this is part of the human condition, that we have to have painful feelings. They are important to us. Our feelings serve a function. And even the ones that aren't helping us, aren't functioning so well for us, that's also normal and natural. That happens for all of us. Some self-compassion, just showing some caring and compassion for that experience that you're having of pain in a similar way that you might a friend or a child or someone outside yourself. How can you show yourself that compassion? And even if it's hard for you, really to ask yourself, why are you able to show that caring and compassion to someone else and not able to allow it or accept it for yourself? And then the last piece, and I know this is kind of complicated, so, again, maybe take a screenshot and sort of walk through it and think about it on your own. And even just one or two of these might be helpful in the moment to think about. And then the expand awareness piece is then try to turn, once you've worked through that acceptance of the experience, then turn your mind to the world outside you. So turn your mind to the shore, turn your mind to what you want for yourself or whatever action it is that you need to take right now in order to move in the direction of the life that you want. So have you ever heard this one, Shira? It's a little bit of a different presentation of a common concept around acceptance.
Yeah, I haven't heard of this specific formula, but I like the way it's laid out. It's really nice.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So at any rate, maybe folks can take that with them. And I so appreciate your joining us, Shira. Maybe you'll come back again.
Sounds good.
And for those of you who are new to this platform, we're having meals 3, 4, 5 times a week. There's more information about the meal calendar on our website. It's my3square.com. So the number 3 and square.com. Next week we have Project Heal Week. Project Heal is a really well-known organization in the eating disorder community, and they do a lot of work around raising awareness of eating disorders, educating, and making services available to people. So we have a number of different representatives next week who will be talking about their own recovery stories and what they're doing and sharing their passions. So Shira, it was so good to see you today, and thank you everyone.